Hello, and welcome to Health and Fitness Redefined. I'm your host, Anthony Amen. Join me today as we take a dive into the world of health and wellness, where we learn to overcome adversity to pick back from fiction and see health and fitness in a whole new light. Today, we're going to take a little bit of a different angle on this show, guys, and we're going to talk about the NYPD, police officers in general, the health tests they have to do to get involved, what they have to do afterwards, and maybe talk a little more about if they're on the right track being healthy. We did a really cool episode. Oh my gosh, I'm going to go back 3.5 years ago on nurses. And we talked about the impact that health and fitness had on the nursing industry and how they were one of the most unhealthiest professions out there. So I would love to talk about how this relates to being a police officer and how we can get involved and how we can help. So without further ado, let me introduce my guest, Vic Ferrari. Vic, it is a pleasure to have you on today.
Anthony, thank you so much for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
I'm excited to do this. As everyone knows, on my show, I live out in Long Island, in great state of New York, and you are a retired NYPD officer. So I was like, everyone knows the NYPD. This is a great way to get started. So without further ado, just introduce yourself a little bit and tell us how you became a police officer and what got you started.
Sure, Anthony. My name is Vic Ferrari. Born and raised in the Bronx, lower middle class kid. I knew what I wanted to do. By 5 years old, I wanted to become a cop. When I was 10 years old, my friends and I used to sneak into the post office and steal FBI wanted posters off the wall and run around the neighborhood and conduct manhunts. By 20 years old, I took the exam. I got hired at 21. And the process to become a New York City police officer back then, there was quite a bit of screening, psychologicals, physical exams, drug testing. So first, what they would do is you would take the psychological exams. I guess they wanted to know if you were nuts first before spending the money on the medical test. So you had to take all these psychological exams. Then you had to meet with a psychologist. Once they cleared you through that hurdle, then became you had to go out to Left Rock City out in Queens for a couple of physicals. And I remember the day I went for my physical, you had to be a suit and tie. And I'm in a room, this large conference room with about 100 young men and women, right? And they're asking us questions and we're going in and out of rooms. And then finally they separate us. They put the females in one room. There's about 30 females, about 70 guys, right? They tell us to drop to our underwear. They're going to check us for a hernia. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, I was 21 years old. I'd never been checked for a hernia before. So you got this doctor, or he claimed to be a doctor, walking around in a lab coat. And he's got this lackey following him around with a clipboard, right? And they tell you when he comes up to you, you had to drop your drawers, turn to your left and cough. And then the guy sticks his hands up and weighs your balls like a produce scale, right? And they're calling out numbers. So like 65, cough, good. 66, cough, good. 67 coughs. He goes, cough again. They pull him off the line. So they were checking you for a hernia. Then came the drug screening portion, right? That was wild. So back then what they would do is, again, they separate the males and the females, and they hand you 2 little cups. And they march us 10 at a time into this men's room that had 10 urinals, right? So I'm like, I had never seen a bathroom with 10 urinals before, right? So you step up to the plate with these 2 cups, and in walks 10 supervisors. I'm like, what is this? I felt like I was going to get whacked. And each supervisor stands behind each cup, and he's looking over your shoulder as you're trying to piss into this cup. And for the shorter supervisors, above your head, mounted was a mirror at a 45-degree angle so he could look up and see what you were doing. And the reason they did this, as I learned to find out, was over the years they would catch guys with prosthetic penises or mustard bottles with urine with a tube snaked down there, taped to their side, and so they could get a clean urine if they were doing drug. I can't piss in front of somebody, right? I can't. So I'm pushing and pushing, and I'm watching guys coming and going with their cups of gold, and I'm there for like fucking 20 minutes, and I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm pushing and pushing. Finally, I let go of a fart in this guy's crotch, and he gets upset, and he's like, you want to hurry up? So that was the first time I'd ever had coffee, because they filled me up with coffee so ultimately I could fill up these cups and get the hell out of there. So once you become a member of the NYPD, and once you have a 2-year probationary period, once you're off that probation, you could blow up into the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. You could get as fat as you want, and no one's going to mess with you. It's just, it's pathetic.
Yeah, so it kind of, stereotypes. Cop walks into a coffee shop, gets a donut, coffee, goes sits in a car. But I want to talk first, just a little about the physical exam as an intro. So if someone is interested to becoming a cop, what is the exam like back then? And do you know what it is now to become an officer? What should they prep for?
It's been so long, but I remember we had to go to a gymnasium and run around and climb ropes and go up a wall. Now, I was 21 years old, and fitness in the 80s wasn't fitness now. I mean, back then it was Jane Fonda videos. But back then, I mean, I was a 21-year-old grocery clerk. It wasn't like I was a Navy SEAL. And I breezed through that. I mean, it was really easy. And I know once you're in the police academy, you had to complete a run of 1.5 miles. And it was a ridiculous amount of time you had. I think it was like 15 or 20 minutes to do 1.5 miles. And for the most part, everybody did it. But then, you would see people, I'd do it in like, 12 or 13 minutes. And then you would see people, they look like goldfish sucking for air. Like you take a goldfish out of the tank and they just, and a couple of people have died doing that run, believe it or not, because for whatever reason, when they going for their exam, it didn't show that they had, an irregular heartbeat or something wrong with them. But what I remember is when I got hired, 21 years old, and I'll say this about them, they sat us down and they said, listen, the average life expectancy for a cop is 55 years old. I'm
Wow.
like, holy shit. And they said, yeah, on average, the greater majority of cops die within 5 years of retirement. They just they were letting themselves go when you're working. And then once you retire, you really let yourself go. And and you were talking about nurses earlier, cops and nurses, they have the worst diet because you're working in these neighborhoods where you're not going to be able to get a salad or a wrap. I mean, sometimes in the neighborhoods, my options were pizza, Chinese food, or a Jamaican beef patty. So it wasn't like I could go and go to Zabar's and get like an arugula salad, with chicken. So, your options were limited depending on the neighborhood you worked in.
Yeah. And from what I understand, a lot of the issues of not eating properly is the long shifts, along with how much overtime you guys do in a day that involves sitting in a car all day and not moving. Can you talk a little more detail about that?
Yeah. If you make an arrest, now again, things may have changed, but when I was a cop, once you arrest somebody, you're married to that person. I mean, until you drop them off in the borough central booking. So I worked in the Bronx most of my career. Until I dropped them off in Bronx central booking and lodged them, I was responsible for this person. So say you and I make we're doing a 7 to 3 shift in the morning, right? And at 10 o'clock in the morning, we make this ridiculous shoplifting collar, holding one, store security, right? We bring them into the station house. That usually takes between an hour to 3 hours, right? But guess what? The fingerprint machine broke, or the computer's down, so you can't get an arrest number. Now you're sitting in the precinct 4 or 5 hours until you can print this guy in the machine. The machine comes back up, or you can get an arrest number. Then you go down to Bronx Central Booking, right? And guess what? Your prisoner's going through heroin withdrawal. So the sergeant at Bronx Central Booking says, hey, are you sick or injured? The guy goes, I'm going with the withdrawal. Hey, Ferrari, Eamon, get this guy out of here and get him to the hospital. Now you're sitting with this guy in a hospital for God knows how long in an emergency room. And, when you bring a prisoner to the hospital, unless they're dropped, they're in terrible shape, you're going to sit around and wait like everybody else. Then once he's medically cleared, you got to bring him down to central booking. And that could take hours. So a simple arrest can take 12, 14 hours to process. So
Wow.
Again, that's where you're grabbing a soda because the only place is a deli across the street. So you're grabbing a sandwich or Chinese food. Your options are limited.
Yeah, it sounds like you just get stuck into something where you don't even have time to go to the bathroom.
Oh, oh yeah, that's happened. Sure.
Yeah, it's a very different lifestyle. So let's talk about what are some tools in place when you were working? Did the state or the precinct in general have for you guys to stay healthier? Did they do any talks on it? Was there anything, or was it just like, good luck?
Yeah, no, it was good luck. Depending on where you worked, some precincts had a gym. When I first got hired, I went to the old 4-2 precinct in the South Bronx where they filmed the movie Fort Apache, the Bronx with Paul Newman. And the place was a dungeon. I mean, it was old. The floors had mold. They were ripped up. I don't even remember if that place had a gym. And if it did, it was probably in the basement and 1,000,000 degrees down there. It just depended on the facility you worked in. If you worked in a newer precinct where they built a new one or renovated it, sometimes you'd get a couple of guys that would bring in old exercise equipment or a weight set, or lucky enough, you'd get a treadmill, but those things would break within days. So it was really it was on you to stay in shape. It really was.
Yeah. Did they teach you anything about the importance of it? Did anyone try to at least steer you in the right direction at all? You're just sitting there laughing. I'm going to just go with no.
Well, the police academy is run by a bunch of Niedermeyers from Animal House. You know what I mean? So the police academy, when I got hired, was a bunch of guys and girls that were like 5 or 6 years older than the recruits. And they were hiding there to study for the sergeant's exam, right? They were working steady days, no overtime. And basically it was like they'd abuse you in the gym. You're worthless and weak. But no, there was no long-term, how to take care of yourself, or you really should do this. And that's a really good point, because they should.
Yeah. So what do you think needs to change?
I think it should start early. I think in the gym, they should hire people or put people in the gym or the police academy that were former, and the NYPD at any given time, you have 30 to 35,000 members. I mean, we have people from all different careers and all different walks of life that entered the NYPD. I mean, I've worked with former Secret Service agents, a couple of morticians. Like, you wouldn't believe like the different backgrounds of people that just said, fuck it, I'm going to become a cop. So I'm sure they have physical trainers or nutritionists, and they should be an incentive to get them into the police academy, that they can, at the very least, when you get hired, plant that seed in young people's heads that you should really take care of yourself.
Yeah. So I know you have a book that you're putting out there. If you want to hold it up for us real quick.
Sure.
Talk about it. And you said pre-show there was a chapter in there. What was it called?
So in my book, NYPD Law and Disorder, there's a chapter called Sickness, Health, and Fat Bastards. And that's about the whole process of the police academy, the gym. And then there's stories in there about overweight cops that have gotten themselves in some sticky situations. So when I was a young cop, early 90s, I'm working in this Bronx precinct, and the police cars, or we used to call them RMPs, radio motor patrol cars, they run 24/7. And the NYPD was steady shifts. So I did 4 to 12s, and my partner and I would get the same car every day from these two female cops that did the day shift. These two female cops both were well over 200 pounds, probably closer to 250 each, right? And in the old days, we used to get the Chevy Caprices that had those long bench seats in the front. They weren't bucket seats. Well, these two heifers, within weeks of getting a new car, their combined tonnage would always break the supports in the chairs, in the seats. So within a couple of weeks, my partner and I would get the car on the 4 to 12, and we're rocking back into the back seat because their weight had broken the seats. So what I would do is I would go to a local dairy and borrow a couple of milk crates and put them in the back seat of the police car as support. So when my partner and I had to step on the gas, we didn't go flying into the back seat. And if we made an arrest, we had to put the prisoner against the side of the car in handcuffs and take the milk crates out of the back seat of the police car and put them in the trunk and drive slow back to the station house, that we didn't fly into the back seat with the two bad guys. But these two women, I mean, every time we got the car, and the back seat was like a who's who of where they went on this grazing buffet. There were McDonald's bags, Dunkin' Donuts bags. I mean, we spent 10 minutes cleaning out the back seat of all the garbage these two used to eat.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of, that's damage to a car, I guess. It's just important. But I want to get more specific about just, do you have examples of people you used to work with? Like you mentioned earlier that people usually only make it 5 years out of retirement of being healthy. So do you personally know people who've suffered from cardiovascular disease and high blood pressure and type 2 diabetics that have now really destroyed their lives from not taking care of themselves well in the force?
Oh, yeah. Plenty. Well, I mean, there's an added to that because of 9/11. I know a lot of people that have died from these mysterious ailments and cancers as a result of being down at ground zero. But yes, cardiovascular disease. I know several cops, unfortunately, that passed away young because of a heart attack. My younger brother had a heart attack. I mean, he's fine now, thank God. But I mean, he was in his 40s, and he was in a doctor's office. He left after a checkup, and he's going back to his car, and he feels his chest lock up. So he's like, "Oh shit!" So he walks back into the doctor's office, and now there's a line to get to the receptionist. So finally, after about 5 minutes, he makes this public service announcement: "I think I'm having a heart attack." So they called an ambulance, and thank God my brother got rushed to the hospital. He got the treatment he needed, and he's fine.
Wow, that's scary.
Yeah.
That's definitely scary. I want to get a little more into I would love to hear some more stories. I would love to get just in general about what things have happened from people just not taking care of themselves. And I would love to really talk more in detail about what really like systems and procedures that you personally think need to be put into place to really change it for the better. Like, how do you get that PSA out? How do you tell people, listen, like, this is something that needs to change. I understand. I've been in your shoes. I've done these 14, 15-hour shifts. I've sat in a car all day. I've realized there's no food around, but you still need to keep your health a priority. And that's something I really, really want to focus on in the second half of the show. But hey, everybody, I have something really exciting to tell you about. We have officially launched a brand new company, something you should go look at right now. That company is called F Squared Consulting. What does that even mean, Anthony? What's F Squared Consulting? It's fitness and finances, the two most important things in your life right now that you're thinking about. Hey, am I healthy? Am I able to live a long life? Can I play with my grandkids? How's my nutrition? Am I getting sick all the time? These are things we talk about all the time on this show. The other side to that is your bank account. How many times are you sitting there looking at your numbers saying, oh man, I have enough money I need to invest. Where should I put that money? What's a stock market? What's a 401k? What's a Roth IRA? How do I get out of debt? How do I make sure I could pay off my credit cards in time? Because did you know, as of this week, a brand new record was just broken, and not one anyone should be proud of. Credit card debt has just topped $1 trillion. You heard that correctly, $1 trillion. So make sure you are not part of that statistic and pay down those loans. So I myself have personally partnered with a good friend of mine, Keith, on Think Stocks. I highly recommend you check him out on YouTube. That is Think Stocks. Link will be in the show notes. But guys, this company, F Squared Consulting, we're going to take both those two things, put them together in a nice sandwich for you, and you'll be able to get the best of both worlds. You'll get myself for fitness and nutrition. You'll get Keith for the financial side of it. You're going to feel so much more relaxed having two people that know their industries like the back of their hands and be able to make sure you are on the path to success. We do month by month consulting, so you don't have to feel locked in. You're not trapped. Try it out. See how you like it. Check out our brand new website, Fit Bodies, Fat Wallets. That's correct. Fit Bodies, fatwallets.com. One more time, Fit Bodies, fatwallets.com. Check it out today and mention this podcast to get 10% off of all our programs. Thanks, guys. Hope to see you there. Back to the show. So, Vic, let's hop back into what I was talking about before we went right into that break, which is what can change? If I said here are the keys to the kingdom, you're in charge of the NYPD, what services, what things are you putting into place to help make sure these police officers are living well past the 5-year mark of retiring? What can be done that can work with their schedules?
I'll tell you, and then I'm going to tell you why it would never work. Again, it should start at hiring. They shouldn't lower the requirements to become a New York City police officer. If anything, I think it should be tougher to become a cop, especially physically. In the police academy, they should have guest speakers. They spend a lot of time, and I agree with it. They spend quite a bit of time in the police academy about police corruption. They're bringing in ex-cops that had been fired and did jail time. They show you these videos. They bring in special prosecutors tasked with rooting out police corruption. Internal Affairs comes in a bunch of times. They should also have ex-cops that have had health issues as a result of their lifestyle. they should also have standards where I mean, I'm living in Florida now, and I know there's police departments down here that, a lot of things the NYPD would never fly. You have to pass a physical exam every year. You have to run an obstacle course or do X amount of push-ups or finish a run. There's also more of an emphasis down here in Florida as far as physical fitness training. There's incentives for it. But because the NYPD is so big, they would have to install it at the borough level and have guest speakers, and they would have to send people out to Health Service Division every year to give them complete physicals. And I don't think that'll ever happen because the NYPD right now has a recruitment problem. That's why there was just a New York City, there was a New York Post article, I think it was last week, about they pushed back the run, and the run is now, they're giving them more time to finish the run. And it's like, well, if you do that, you're just going to get more out of shape people, and it's just going to become a vicious cycle.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I know I don't know much about it, but I know the FDNY does require constant physicals and does require the fire stations to give out gym memberships to the fire department. Why isn't the same true for the NYPD, or is it and I'm just not aware?
No, you're right. But the NYPD is much larger than the fire department. I don't know how large the fire department is, but they don't have 35,000 members. I mean, I think at one point we were closer to 40 in the 90s, but we do everything in bulk. The NYPD, we hire in bulk, we train in bulk. Like, just on a typical day, you and I have to go out to Rodman's Neck once or twice a year to qualify with our firearms. I mean, you're going with a couple of hundred people, and you got to get there at like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and they have different relays, and you've got 50 or 100 people shooting at a time. So everything we do, it's not just like they're calling down one person to do something. And I think it would boil down to money and resources to put us on par with FDNY.
All right. So then, more specifically, if you have a police officer listening to this right now, what advice could you give them to help them out personally?
Stay in shape, eat right, do your exercise, run. Because even cops that don't get involved in a lot of things, there's different types of cops do different types of things, but you have the active cops. They tend to be more in shape because they know the shit can hit the fan. But even a cop that's not, just got his head down, just, a report taker, you never know what you're walking into. And there's always somebody bigger and tougher than you. So you would better have that stamina and strength that even if you can't, win a battle with somebody, you can hang on long enough to get on that radio and call for help and, keep yourself alive. And, it's happened. I mean, there's been a couple of times where I was in the fight of my life with somebody and I'm like, oh shit, I can't lose this fight, because if I do, we're both, it's happened a couple of times where we're both holding on to a gun and your adrenaline kicks in and your life is flashing before your eyes. And you're saying to yourself, I can't lose. If I lose, this is it. This guy is going to kill me.
Wow. So, I mean, do you have any more specific examples of certain exercises they should be doing in general? Like, is it more of the weight training? Is it more of the cardiovascular side of it? Is it like, what specifically should they be focusing on while working?
Upper body strength, and you should definitely have stamina and run. It depends on if you don't have the resources. If in your neighborhood there's not a gym, you can always do push-ups. Do 10 push-ups at intervals, then you'll build up to 25, then you'll build up to 50. Keep your upper body strong, and you can run. I mean, just buy a good pair of shoes and jog if you don't have a gym membership or you don't have time. Do your sit-ups. I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, especially now with the internet, you can go on YouTube and look up all these exercises that you can do at home if you don't have the money or time to go to a gym.
Yeah, definitely agree. And then, what advice would you give to somebody that's thinking about getting into it, becoming a police officer? What are some takeaways they can take from knowing they want to join about it? People that are thinking about becoming a police officer. What's some advice you to give them?
For young people, once you get hired, for the first 2 years, and I'm talking from the day you get sworn in and for the first 2 years of your career, keep your mouth shut and your ears open and just listen and absorb. Cops in a precinct, they don't like new people. You're like an alien dropped off from outer space. They got to warm up to you. Don't go in there as a know-it-all or have a big mouth. Just keep your head down and listen and learn the land of the. It's almost like going to prison your first couple of weeks because you don't know who's who. People are coming up to you nice, trying to scam you with some bullshit. I remember when I got hired, I mean, the old timers start hitting you up to join this club, join this society. And it's like things you're giving them $25, $30 and you're never going to go to these things. Just be humble, just listen and just keep your mouth shut and try to learn as much as you can.
Yeah. Absorb and listen. Great one. And then what about those that are retiring or just about to retire?
Any day above ground is a good day. I struggled when I retired from the NYPD because I had a great career. I worked a lot of overtime. I was very active. And then it was like the music stopped and I was standing there looking for my chair. You got to find something to occupy your time, to keep your mind sharp, to keep you busy. And that's how I got into writing. But before I got into writing, I became a cop down here in Florida. That wasn't for me. I was painting furniture for a while. That became just too physical and time consuming after a while. And I got into writing. And I think anybody that's worked in law enforcement has stories to tell. And I think they should take a shot at it because it's quite easy to do. If I can do it, anybody can do it.
Great advice. Absolutely. Keep your mind sharp even after retirement. Keep yourself focused. And I think just in general, like retiring from any position, especially a physical one, like a police officer, a firefighter, military, athlete, you see like people eat the same way, but do way less activity. So they end up way more unhealthier. Those are the careers that really suffer after retirement. So I think the advice of keeping your mind sharp, pick up an activity, do something, and keep yourself focused really will make a world of difference to somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I go to reunions and sometimes I don't, or I on Facebook, that's how I keep in touch with a lot of people. And, there'll be photos of, guys and girls at like, parties and stuff up in New York. And I'm like, I don't recognize some of them. It takes me a second because I'm like, wow, I couldn't believe they've let themselves go that much, so it's sad. I hope, they try to keep more physically fit.
Yeah, definitely. And Vic, I'm just going to start wrapping this thing up. So I'm going to ask you the final two questions I ask everybody. The first one is, if you could summarize this episode in 1 or 2 sentences, what would be your take-home message
of this show?
Yep.
It's a great platform to exchange ideas about physical fitness and nutrition.
Love it. And then the second one, how can people find your books, get a hold of you, all that good stuff?
Go on Amazon, go to the book section, type in my name, Vic Ferrari, like the car, and my book library will pop up. All my books, I've written 6 books, 4 of which about the New York City Police Department. They're $10 paperback or $2.99 ebook download.
I love it, guys. Definitely go check it out. Support a fellow police officer. Really appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for listening to this week's episode of Health and Fitness Redefined. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button and join us next week as we dive deeper into this ever-changing field. And remember, fitness is medicine. Until next time. For us, we know what it's like to feel unhealthy, depressed, and downright defeated. We want to show others there is a right way, and through fitness, you could do anything you set your mind to. Fitness can give you that motivation, confidence, energy you need to bridge that mental gap and prevent you from missing important life events. We understand it's about feeling better, living longer, and being good examples for our kids. We understand this because we live it. And for us, that's the redefined difference.